Hello? Hello. Hello out there. How's it going, folks? Okay, there we are. All right, now I'm seeing things unfold, but as always, technology, it's weird. It's got gremlins. It does. It just does. Hi, my name's Mary Cronert, and I'm here doing a live stream pop-up art studio. I do them most every Wednesday from 2 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's so good to be here. And if you are out there, let me know. Say hello. Feel free to chat with me as I go through the afternoon. Do what feels right for you. If you want to gather some supplies and make art with me, that's awesome. If you want to just sit back and listen or watch and not type in anything, not say hello, that's okay too. So for folks who might be new to this live stream, this is just some virtual art hive time where we can come together and create, where I can have an opportunity to connect with you out there, wherever you might be in the world. And I know it's not always easy and it doesn't always feel right to join in the chat when a live stream like this is happening. I always appreciate it when people do say hi, and I always learn so much as we go through the hour and a half and have these fantastic conversations about what's on everyone's minds, what people are working on, where they might be encountering different issues or trouble with their creative projects, things like that. And you know what? We have such an amazing community out there online. Undoubtedly, if you are struggling with anything, chances are you'll find someone in this space, this safe space that is a Living Room Community Art Studio virtual space. You'll find someone who might be a resource to you, who can, from their own lived experience in art or life, say, hey, I don't know where you're at, but this is something that I found helpful for myself. So please feel free out there to connect, to say hi. Let us know what creative things you've got going on these days. And then we can have a conversation about it if you like. But as always, if that's too many spoons for you to handle, then you are more than welcome to sit back and just listen or watch. And of course, this is an hour and a half long, right? You might not have time to watch or sit through all of this art making. That's all right as well. You know what? You can come back once it's been archived and watch it then. And of course, for those folks who don't know, we post everything over on our YouTube page. We have some updating to do this week because we've been on a bit of a holiday, but you can always find all our live streams there, the Tuesday night or the Tuesday afternoon live stream artist chats as well. So if you've missed something in the past or you can't stay very long today, as long as you would like, you can always revisit this after the live stream has ended and enjoy it at your own time, at your own pace. Does that make sense? Yeah? If anyone has any questions out there, please let me know. But for now, I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, I don't know, maybe do some housekeeping off the top of things to start, because I know that this is an interesting week for folks. If you're watching this once it's been archived, hello. But we're in just entering into September here in Ontario. Hey, Momo, it's back to school week here. So a lot of folks are caught up in either getting their families ready to go to school, or perhaps going to school yourself. Maybe you're heading to post-secondary for the first time. Maybe you're returning to post-secondary. Maybe there's just so many things going on. Maybe you're someone who's supporting someone who's going back to school. Maybe you're in a place a little bit like me and you're thinking, well, I'm not going back to school. What do I do? Well, this is a time to explore that. Those are some of the themes that are on my mind today. Middle spaces, liminal spaces. That's a big Art Hive word. We love using that word in Art Hive land. But what it really means is just the space between things, the space between, where sometimes things do feel ambiguous, sometimes things do feel uncertain, or maybe even a little awkward. Maybe they feel free and liberating. Maybe it's a positive feeling of being in that space between. Whatever you might be experiencing today, if it's anything like that, I'm going to invite you to make art on that theme today, to just let your creativity flow with whatever materials you might have on hand, and to ask yourself, where am I? Where am I? Am Am I somewhere in between? If I am, where am I in that space? What does it feel like, and what do I need to express about that today? And of course, you can express it in any way you want. Through knitting, through collaging, through sculpture, through cooking, through gardening. There are so many different ways to express ourselves. The kind of arts I'm going to be doing today are just one of those. And Momo, interesting. Yes, of course. So Momo says, hi again. We think about our plants and how to transition them to winter. Again, that's another liminal space kind of experience, that period of transition. And of course, it's that time as well. Everything seems to be preparing itself to go to sleep in the garden here. The basil is looking a little less fresh. It's flowered, it's gone to seed in some cases. We've been having some pretty big storms here in Durham region, and last night there was just thunder, lightning, wind, leaves blowing everywhere. So everything's kind of coded in nature of one kind or another today. It feels like, yeah, we're even caught in between these seasonal gusts of weather and what that looks like. You know, one moment it's pouring rain, and the next moment, right now, for example, it's beautiful and sunny. It's interesting times. But let me know what you're doing in your garden. That's always a popular conversation topic here as we make art. What are folks doing with their gardens, and how do you respond to nature around this time of year? Or how do you let it communicate to you? That's another great theme to explore creatively. You know, what we're learning from nature in these periods of transition. But let's see, I want to show you some stuff. So before I start making my art proper, I want to show you some cool things. And this is a shout out to anyone who has donated supplies to the living room before. So sometimes we receive materials that we don't know what to do with. And as we've been creating and getting ready for the Mobile Art Hive launch, which will hopefully be happening in the next couple of weeks, with an official recognition event happening in November when we have a local artist paint our art hive, we've been making workshop kit bags. So anyone who's ever donated fabric samples, those big swatch books, I want to say thank you. In the past, we've not always known what to do with them. We've gotten a little crafty here and there, but the beautiful bounty of fabric swatch books we've had, we are now turning into little tote bags that we can put supplies in when we meet people in the community, in the Mobile Art Hive, and hopefully they can bring them back with them every time we're in their neighborhood and they visit us, so they can keep supplies in there. So here's a little one I have here. I don't know if you can see. Is that a good... It's so cool. They're little buttonhole bags. So again, these are just... Here, you know what? Let me switch cameras so I can show you a bit more. This is how I am so excited. These bags have been so much fun. So taking these fabric samples, you know, that have the rough paper on one side, kind of gluey paper, you know, they're perfect for this kind of project. Nothing too fancy. Just done a long zigzag stitch along the top. There you go, a little buttonhole bag. Nothing too fancy, using all those fabulous fabric swatches from maybe the late 80s, 90s, noughties, I'm not sure. Some of them feel so vintage to me. And just doing a lovely little mashup of fabrics so that when we're out there and we have supplies to share with the community, we can send you with your own little tote bags. And of course, if Laura Brown is out there listening and watching, Laura has also been sewing some fantastic tote bags for the community. So when the Art Hive is out there, yeah, we'll have lots of fun stuff to share with you. Hey, Joanna! And Joanna's saying, so delighted to be here. Bags are a great idea for fabric swatches. Yeah. And it's because they're sometimes in the Art Hive, like the studio space proper, we would have, you know, you'd see this fabric, but you wouldn't know what to do with it, really. It's maybe not to everyone's taste. You know, there's only so many flowers that a person can integrate into their artwork or their activities. But this is just, I'm just having too much fun making these. And it's great for someone like me who's so impatient. We don't, you know, it's great when really useful or practical things come in donations, like those wonderful fabric, the canvas fabric handles, like in the trims and notions. But we don't have a lot of that right now. And I just felt so, I'm not up to it. I'm not up to sewing handles and turning them inside out and then stitching them and securing them. No. So for now, buttonhole handles. Yeah, you can tell I'm really excited about this, huh? It's the little things sometimes. Ah, the silly little things. And Joanna, how are you? How are things out west? I'm hoping that everyone is okay where you are at. It's been such an intense time looking and seeing what's happening out west to folks, and just being, that uncertainty with the forest fires. And I know for some people they say it's, you're getting used to it. But I wish folks didn't have to. But I'm hoping you're okay. And I'm excited to know and learn about what you've been working on recently as well. And Brandon, hi Brandon. Flowers on everything. So good to know, Brandon. If we have those fabric swatches coming back, I'll give you another call. I'll give you a call. I suppose it's the palettes too. Pink and green and gray. It was a time that was hugely popular. I think it's a perfect description of my mom's house, for example. Those are all her favorite colors. Mine, not so much. And interesting, Joanna's asking, what else have people created with those swatches? So folks, if you're out there listening and you have been making art with fabric swatches in the past, let us know what you've been working on. I can speak to what people were working on at the studio. It was always, I think sometimes it was accessories. I remember people making, and these are really fun to make as well, like fabric flower buttons and things like that. Just taking little pieces and sort of curling them up, wrapping them up, shaping them into like little pins and buttons and things like that. Eyeglass cases, sunglass cases, iPhone cases. I've used them before in travel journals. Like I think I made one a few weeks ago. I haven't completely finished it yet. But yeah, this was another look at using up fabric swatches just to create a simple kind of journal just with pages held in with an elastic in the center. So that's fun. But it's great to get that fabric out there and into the world because, and it's a good problem to have, and there might be other hives who have similar experiences. We receive a lot of them. And when designers are turning over, I guess, getting new swatch books in, I suppose you can only hold on to them for so long. So we tend, when we have donations of swatch books, to like bins and bins of them. So I've got tons of them right now in storage and tons of them here. And yeah, it's great just to find those opportunities to make use of them. Of course, if you wanted to patch them together for upholstery, that would be great. Cat beds? Haha, yes, cat beds. So I'm just shouting out things that I've seen and remembering now from people making in the studio. The cat bed, actually, that was a really lovely one. Because they're not always big, so you can't make something giant unless you quilt them all together. But you know what? I would love to know. Like Joanna, if you're out there and you've used fabric swatches to create before, what have you created? I haven't tried dyeing that fabric either, that would be an interesting experiment too, to see what would happen if, the pink and grays aren't your thing, right? What happens if you tie-dye them? I know they have some polyester, some fabrics in there that may not take the dyes as well, but I do enjoy seeing fabrics that perhaps have gone out of, aren't on trend. I enjoy seeing how people repurpose them, and sometimes that's using dye to give them new life, make them a little more interesting, quirky. But yeah, shout out to all the folks who've donated fabric swatch books, all the designers, all the interior decorators. Thank you, because we're finally being able to make good use of them. Now we just got to get that mobile art hive out on the road so we can get these into people's hands. Travel journal. Yeah, Joanna, it's a fun, simple thing, fairly simple, and you can do a no-sew version, which is even better, just gluing everything together. I like making the pocket-sized ones as well, so that's where you can make use of all the really tiny scraps that... Oh, I almost washed my paintbrush off in my coffee. And of course, travel journals today might mean something very different than they once did, since not all of us are able to travel right now. And Joanna says, I have a few swatch books myself, but was not sure what to do. Decorate cardboard doll houses is one thing I have done. That's right. Oh, wow. Now a flood of those kind of memories are coming back to me. Someone donated a beautiful dollhouse to the living room once. It was huge. And if anyone remembers this out there, let me know. Yeah, it was an enormous, really beautifully crafted wooden dollhouse. I guess it would have been about the size of my desk here, so longer, like about maybe 1.5 meters in length, maybe 3 feet, maybe more tall. And we had it in the living room forever, not quite sure what to do with it because the original donor had given it to us to turn into something artsy. But it's always, if before we do something with it, before we turn it into like a little library, for example, or a seasonal art display, I always like to see if we can use it for what it is, right? That's something in a lot of neighborhoods, for a lot of people, they might not have had something like that before. And so we did eventually find a family who fell in love with it, and I think it was Gord, maybe. And they took it, and I know that they were intending to refurbish it and do exactly that, Joanna, to take some of the fabric swatches and, of course, wallpaper. I love old wallpaper as well. It's so great for scrapbooking and projects like that as well. They were going to refurbish it, turn it into something exciting and usable and practical as that dollhouse for their family. That would be a really interesting kind of follow-up. I don't know if it's something that can ever be done, but it would be so great to check in with people's art projects from a long time ago. Maybe we should put out a post and just say, where is your art now? What are you doing with your art? What is the life it's had beyond the living room community art studio? Because I think we all like to think that the creations that are made, that we make, and perhaps we give to other people, that they find life and they are adored and appreciated. But it's not always the case. And that's always something in Art Hive land that I know it's an ongoing conversation about when we were sharing space, especially, and things would get left to dry on drying racks, or someone would say, I'll come back for it next week, and you can only hold on to so much art, works in progress at a time. At the living room, we had this beautiful drawing shelf that was donated to us. I think it came from, I think it was Kevin's family, that a chocolatier that donated this drawing shelf. And it was perfect. So folks could put their paintings on there. We could move the shelves around to create space for larger things. And after the first few months of being opened, we realized we will be overwhelmed with orphaned art. Things that people make that's process-based, that maybe they don't actually want to take home. Because, of course, that's fine, too. Sometimes we make things to just make things, to let them out, to not have to bring them home with us. And of course, in the studio, we also worked with a lot of people who were insecurely housed and street involved. So, understandably, where do people keep art if you're making art? So we had a couple of different guidelines or rules. Rules is a weird word, but we had a couple of different things in place. One of them was we put up a little sign and we said, basically a time limit on keeping your works in progress on the shelf, a 2-week time limit. So if you didn't come to pick up your art or continue to work on your art, we'd recycle it, repurpose it, put it back on the shelf for someone else to continue building upon it, elaborating it, weaving it into their own creation, for example. And if you did return and it was a work in progress, we just asked that they added a little update post-it note with the new date, so we knew that it was still an active piece and not an abandoned piece. That was one way we dealt with it. And we just have really honest conversations with people, and everyone understands that. For folks who were street involved, if they were prolific in their creation, we would explore other ways of storing their art. We couldn't do it in the basement of the studio because it was damp and so much work got destroyed. So we learned very quickly, basements and art, no, not a good thing, not a good fit, at least not that basement. But we would make folders for a few folks in the community who were regulars and find a place to stash their folder behind the counter. And it was difficult because, again, we'd get overwhelmed from time to time. And then just have an honest conversation and say, hey, what would you like us to do with it? We can't hold on to all of it right now. Are there special pieces in here you want to keep? Are there pieces you want to give to people? And a lot of art was shared with the community because of that. And sometimes artists would also sell their work, of course. So one artist in particular I'm thinking of, and this was, my heart breaks when I think of this because we were just at the beginning of positioning ourselves for an exhibit for this individual, an exhibit and sale, like a micro exhibit. But when the pandemic hit, but they were beginning to have some success with selling their work to the community, and people would come by to see him work, to see these giant canvases that he created come to life. And he would work, anything was a potential canvas. So some folks out there might know exactly who I'm talking about, but anything could be a canvas, an old door, a giant piece of Bristol board. I think one time he actually painted on somebody else's art folder, and we had to have, there was another conversation. It happens, right? But just beautiful, beautiful pieces. And they just got bigger and bigger and bigger, and we could never find canvases that were big enough for him. And that's an artist that I haven't had a chance to connect with in the last year and a half. A lot of other folks I see around town, but this individual, I miss him, and I hope I get to see him soon. And those are the kind of things, I suppose, again, that comes back to that idea of liminal space and middle space and transition. And I don't know how things are for folks who are out there, wherever you might be in the world. There might be different rules in place, different new things happening. But it's a strange place to be for me right now. Waiting for some things to happen, preparing for other things to happen, watching as other things happen so I can learn about how to move forward through those things. And I don't think I'm alone in that process. All right. So what am I working on today? That's a very good question. It is indeed a piece inspired by that idea of liminal space, middle space. Yeah, that makes sense. And I've got my handy bookbinding all there. Let's see what happens here. I wanted to work on this wet, and then so I could tear it a little easier, and that seems to be the case. It seems to be working. Haha, excellent. So let's start with that. Yeah, just feeling that tension, a tension and an openness all at the same time. How is that possible, folks? And Simone, hello Simone, and Wendy, hello Wendy. So Simone says, yes, we live in the middle of things, as Sherry Turkle would say. Oh, Sherry, some excellent drops here. Okay, so post a link. If there are people or mentors or writers or teachers in your life, let's share links today, because there's so many folks in my mind that I'm learning from. Every day I'm learning from. And Sherry Turkle is someone that maybe I need to revisit and reinvestigate again. Is there anyone else who's got things they want to share? Those kind of words of wisdom or voices that we should attune to. Wendy saying hello, just popped in to say hi from Bedford, Nova Scotia. Oh my goodness. Give Nova Scotia a giant hug for me. And if you can, if you're near an ocean, dip your toes in for me. Just a little bit. Gosh, I miss oceans. Oh, and I'm so hopeful. There's actually my partner's father who's out there is hopefully sending the living room some typewriters that he's found. So you know what? I'm going to put this out there just in case anyone has any typewriters. I'm not looking for anything super fancy pants, although all typewriters are in demand these days. But one of the projects I want to take out on the road with the mobile art hive is I always want to have typewriters on board that we can pull out and location so people can have that experience of creating and writing and composing in a different way. So not digitally, not that there's anything wrong with that. But I want to be able to set up some typewriters and have some typewriter jams if possible. So Wendy, if you're down in Nova Scotia and you see any typewriters in any of those vintage shops, or what's the store that's down there? Not that you'll be running around too much. I don't even know if they'll be open. What's the store called? Frenchies? Frenchies. If there are any Nova Scotia folks who are listening, and I know Frenchies might also be a chain in Quebec as well. I used to love going to Frenchies. I remember used clothes though. I'm not so sure if they had used appliances or things like typewriters in their store. But yeah, shout out to Carol Robinson who helped introduce me to Frenchies. But yes, so typewriters, if people have typewriters that you're no longer using, message me, email me, let me know. If you've got a typewriter that needs some TLC that you'd like to donate, or even sell, if you know someone who's trying to sell some old typewriters, let me know. We're at the beginning of this process and trying to think of what are things that we can work on with community that are safe, that are interesting, and kind of community collaborations, things that we can do in common. Because we won't have the same abilities we used to in the studio, as in like the living room space, you know. In the space of the studio, people could do whatever they wanted to, and did do whatever they wanted to. A lot of individual art making, a lot of trends, a lot of people trying things that they'd seen on Pinterest. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I'm imagining in the mobile art studio or through the mobile art hive, things will look a little different. We'll still have materials that anyone can use, but because we'll be outside for a lot of that time, or agencies will be hosting us, I think that there's going to be a little shift. So I want to move into it with intention and kind of harness the creative energy of community wherever we go with a suggestion, an idea, a question that I pose to everyone, and providing tools for people to respond in case, if maybe it's too cold for painting, right? There might be other things we can do instead. And Wendy's saying, yes, I will pop my toes in the lake and in the basin for you. Thank you so much. That's lovely. I'm feeling it now. Also, interesting. There's a nice SPCA thrift close by Wendy. So Wendy, if you see typewriters, let me know. I'd be happy to take those off your hands. We have one typewriter now donated by, of course, Laura Brown, who is the queen of all thrifters, magic thrifter. I almost feel like she should charge for her services. She just has this eye, she knows, she senses when something is out there. And hopefully a few more typewriters, as I was mentioning, coming from Nova Scotia, but I don't think you can have too many. It's kind of like sewing machines in an art hive. And Joanna's saying, on the Facebook, I saw the collaborative net and weaving creation with Trent students. Wow, fabulous idea. What kind of net is that? Joanna, isn't that awesome? Yeah, folks, I have to send another, a thank you shout out. Today's full of shout outs to Trent University Durham for inviting us to be a part of their orientation week with their students coming in, and the week prior, their staff as well. There's an openness they have about acknowledging mental health and connectivity and finding ways to communicate and to express those things safely. So we were invited to take part in orientation week with the weaving. We explored a few different kinds of mesh, but in the end what we used was garden fencing. And I think it was an inch, so there could be an inch, what's the word? Diameter isn't the word. That's a word for round things. Inch sized squares in this netting. I think it might be a deer fence. So not the super loosey-goosey fencing mesh that you might find that's almost like fabric. It is plastic, so it has a little bit of structure, but it also gives with the fabric. And we just took a whole bunch of fabric strips that we had, again, through donations, and fabrics that never quite found a home at the living room, and fabrics that have since been donated that I want to get out there and into people's hands in a creative way. And just invited people to weave themselves into this mesh, and along with words, any words or symbols that for them represented their hopes or their dreams for the year ahead, or perhaps something that they wanted others to know about them, or maybe even something that they just wanted to know was out there and a part of the community. So it didn't need to make sense to anyone but themselves, to the artists who were contributing, and of course no perfection allowed. So sometimes I think it's just enough to say, that's me. That's the purple. The purple in that is me, right? So when we finish the weaving, we're going to back it, and it will be exhibited at Trent. And, it's going to be really interesting. It's there on its own today. I wish I could be with it to, chat with people and engage and explain the project. So one has to hope that students, and hey, any Trent Durham people, if you're watching, please feel free to just do it. You don't need anyone there to guide you in the process. We put up a little sign, but if you have an idea and you feel compelled to create, please do. So we used, I think it was a deer netting in the end. A deer fence, rather. You can buy just a roll of it at the Home Depot, or, other hardware stores are available as well. And it worked out quite well. And the quilting loom that it's on was a gift. Hello, Shelley. Grid. Thank you, Joanna. That's the word. The little squares, the grid, the 1-inch grid. Perfect. Oh, the brain. The brain. So yeah, that was a really beautiful project. It's still a work in progress. I'm excited to see what the students do with it, what they choose to say through it. And it is always that really interesting time when you're starting a project like that, a weaving. Because it's so, as someone who's bringing in an activity like that as well, with the living room, I don't know about anyone else out there who's done community weaving projects before. And especially if you're not there all the time to guide people. There is this fear somehow, this vulnerability. Fear is the wrong word, vulnerability maybe, of it just not becoming anything at all. The what ifs, but in that negative inner critic kind of way. What if no one completes it? What if no one wants to do it? What if it's empty? What if we only have one piece of weaving on it? All of those bizarre things that might run through your head, that certainly run through mine. But it's also this incredible metaphor for community work, the faith that we have in community engagement and art making, that people do have something that they want to say. And given the opportunity, people will contribute and participate. And that together we'll tell a story over time, and it won't necessarily happen all at once or instantly. But bit by bit, the story builds, and who we are as a community reveals itself. And with students going back to school right now, it is such an interesting and strange time. And I can only imagine the different things that might be going through students' heads right now as they are trying to negotiate, what it's like to be in class and to be seeing other people again all of a sudden after a year or two being virtually taught and engaging. There's a lot of stuff. And that's students of all ages as well. What was really great about yesterday, just a little coffee break, was seeing the range of students who were moving back into the space of learning and growing. All ages, all abilities, all walks of life. Some students who we knew, like the living room, we'd known from years ago from doing different activities. So the strange thing for me, which is a wonderful thing, of seeing students that, were once high school students, young students, volunteers, placement students with us, now moving forward in their careers and doing other things and studying other things. And they can remember they can remember their experiences with us in ways that I can't always remember. And just learning about what their dreams are, what they want to do in the world, how they hope to arrive at those points, and also recognizing that, there's anxiety there. There's a natural kind of, again, the middle space of not knowing where we are right now and how to find comfort in the in-between places or find a way to simply be in that liminal space. They were a fantastic reminder of that. You can't pretend to know everything or feel, entirely secure. We don't know what lays ahead. But we can still enter into every moment with a kind of grace and enthusiasm and curiosity that'll carry us forward. What am I going to do? This is what I'm going to do. What am I going to do? Oh, is that glue still alive? Yes, it is. And there were students revealing really beautiful things about themselves in the strips, that, like in the written words, just really beautiful, inspiring in their honesty, like moments of, acknowledging never give up. Students who perhaps were on a journey and had tried but couldn't do it when they wanted to, couldn't study when they wanted to, but they were back at it. They weren't, letting, they were just not. It's okay to let things get in your way. Sometimes we don't have the strength or energy to get around or over or under or through things. And that's okay. The difficult moments, and they're going to be there. And sometimes staying still and taking stock of ourselves is exactly what we need to do. Surrendering a little bit to feel what we feel and acknowledge the difficult moments that might shed some light or teach us something once we do acknowledge them. And maybe it's about reaching out and getting supports to help us move forward. But to see students acknowledging that with such grace and saying, I'm going to be here anyways, and I'm going to do this anyways, I'm going to try anyways, and I'm not going to give up on myself. That was lovely. And Simone saying, yes, I love that you can be in between emotions. I did a little comic about this. Simone, you've been doing some amazing work, and actually you just reminded me about your group, your virtual group. I'd love to learn how it went. But if you did a comic about it that you want to share with people, if you're feeling open to it, I'd love to see that as well. And yeah, being in between emotions or having more than one emotion at the same time and not necessarily knowing what this is. I mean, we all know it's possible to be happy and sad at the same time. It's possible to experience 4 seasons in one day, emotionally, and sometimes in a moment. And you're right, Simone says you can be both vulnerable and strong at the same time. I might even, say that maybe at times it's a vulnerability that helps us to be strong. Do you think? Being able to acknowledge what we struggle with, what might be too much for us to carry. I mean, I guess that's also a conversation about what vulnerability is. What do we mean when we say we're feeling vulnerable? Because sometimes feeling vulnerable to me is also, it can also just be being available. And I think sometimes I've tried to reframe that for myself, and I learned that from someone, and in the moment I can't remember who I learned that from. But just the idea of, I'm going to, instead of, those times where I say I'm feeling vulnerable right now, I'm feeling available right now. I'm feeling open. I'm feeling open with everything that might imply or bring on. And as with every emotion too, there's the negative and the positive sides of things. There's the things that we might enjoy. A feeling is just a feeling. An emotion is just an emotion. It's information. Where do I want this now? Let's see. Let's see. Emotions as information. Forgive me as I'm going a little quiet right now, just figuring out what I want to do with these pieces. And this is interesting. So is this Simone saying on the subject of vulnerability, and this is perhaps what vulnerability is to you, feeling more raw, maybe, asks Simone, or suggests. Simone suggests, which could be the name of your, like, a really cool podcast. Simone suggests. Simone suggests. Welcome to Simone Suggests. I'm just getting silly now. But I think so. I think, yeah, feeling raw, feeling just that tender, that's another good word. Hey, Sandra, welcome. It's so good to see you here. We missed our Tuesday live stream, or not a live stream, our Zoom group that we normally have every Tuesday morning at 9:30, which is where I usually get to check in with Sandra and say hello. I'm hoping you're doing okay, hoping everything is as it should be, exactly where you need to be right now. Yeah, that question of vulnerability, not knowing, that's another interesting place, another aspect of vulnerability sometimes. What is happening with this piece? You know what, I'll work on that. I'll start here. This scrapbooking glue, is it doing what I want it to do? Maybe not. Maybe I'll give some a good old, I know my paper is still moist. Yep, that's still sticky, but maybe I'll give that a go. See if it just helps keep things in place for the next step in this project. It's interesting reflecting on what things mean, because we use those terms all the time, don't we? Terms like vulnerability and things like that. And let's see, Simone saying the workshop was great. Oh, that's fantastic. So Simone hosted an online workshop, a creative wellness workshop. Just wanted to check in to see how it went. Simone says there was a couple people who work with teens at the session who are going to try the techniques we explored with them. Brilliant. Look at that. That's, how we become resources for other folks in our community. And that was a free workshop you offered as well. So I want to keep an eye out for more of that coming in the future. I imagine that's not going to be the last one you host, right? Yeah. It's something that has come out of this time, this strange time, that I really do adore. That we found other ways to connect and share what we do. And it's not so strange now for people to attend a Zoom workshop or watch a live stream or listen to a live stream. And as we move forward into the fall, we're going to be looking at our own programming and adjusting things here and there. But I think I'm always going to maintain some kind of virtual programming in the future, which is really exciting. I'm glad it went so well, Simone. Yes, please do keep us in the loop when you have other ones coming up. Yeah, and Simone says, yes, stay tuned. There will be more. Excellent. That's great to hear. That's so great to hear. All right. There we go. So that's good enough for now. We'll hold things in place. Next steps. More coffee. Oh. All right. Deadly Grounds and Brew Wizards, what would I do without you? So this is where things get interesting, and I'm not quite sure what I want to show here or how I want to show it. So in classic spontaneous art making style, I'm just going to go for it. just going to start making holes in my canvas, and I think my little paper canvas, and because it's wet and gluey and all of those things, it is a little, yeah, I love it. That's kind of what I was hoping for, since the paper feels a little more like fabric since it's still wet. And there are days when it comes to making art where all I want to do is kind of mess things up. And we've talked about that before too. Let's see. So that is good. I feel like, yeah, and everything's still kind of sticking, so I can press it back down after the fact. What do I want to do here? One more hole. Boop, 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 boop. That's my hole punching song. Okay. You know, before I get doing that, I did bring out some stamps today, so I want to play with some stamps that I might overlay as well. So before I put any threads on there, I want to add that in. It's been a long time since I've done any stamp work at all, so bear with me here. And I don't have any fancy scrapbooking stamp pads, which is okay. This needs to be juiced a little bit more by the looks of it. I'm wondering. Donated stamp pads. Donated refillers. So thank you again to everyone who's donated to the living room. See, I do use stuff. We use stuff. Okay. Now what happens if? What if? And I might want to use these now, or I might actually overlay them once I stitch in my thread. Oh, that worked out better than I thought. Lovely. Never quite sure. Of course, stamping on the tissue paper, you never know what you're going to get either. And so I have these stamps. I have an empty bird cage. I have a butterfly and a feather. Oops. Put that one up there. I might tear things up afterwards. All right. Yeah. Can folks see that on the screen? I'm not sure if it's showing up as nicely as it is here. Yeah, that's kind of cool. That's kind of cool. All right. Some more tearing. Today seems to be all about tearing stuff. And this one I do want underneath. So what do I need now? Now I do need a little bit of glue. Now where are those little bowls I used to use for my glue? I'm asking like you folks know, like you're in the space with me. If we were in the living room, you'd be able to say, Mary, over there, you left it on that table, over there. Oh, ho, ho, hello, gooey, gloopy. This is what happens when you don't use glue. Oh, wow, that's wild. That clear glue really just turned into kind of rubbery, silicone-y kind of thing. That's interesting. Note to self, something to explore in the future. Can I make a jelly plate with school glue, the gel, the the weird gel school glue. Has anyone out there tried that before? Let me know if you have. Okay, so because I don't have one of my trusty little dishes around, I'm just going to do this. Oh, wild. Ho, 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 ho. So this is very gel-like. So because I don't have, oh, that's interesting. I was worried that because these stamps weren't sort of fancy pants scrapbooker waterproof stamps, that if I added water they would bleed, but they're holding up really, really well. Brilliant. I'll have to pierce those holes again, but I have the marks in the back, so it'll be a whole lot easier to do. But yeah, that conversation about vulnerability as a vulnerability as a liminal space. I like that idea a whole lot. And yeah, vulnerability and strength, two things that can be felt at the same time. Vulnerability and courage. Fear and courage. All these things that we sometimes think of as things that are opposite ends of the spectrum, but no, not always. I think perhaps more often than we realize they're sharing space together at the same time, holding hands. Or as one of my teachers would say, they're dancing together. Because there's a relationship between everything that we feel as well. And hopefully we become more adept at recognizing that relationship so that, you know, we can tease things apart, have conversations about it with ourselves, if no one else. And that was a really lovely thing, actually, you know, being on campus with that weaving project. I sensed that that was something that was there in the air, an awareness of that. Maybe it was just me projecting or hoping. Who knows? Let's see what we have here. 2:53. So you know what? I'll take a moment to welcome anyone who might be tuning in midway through the live stream. We're here for another half hour. And if folks have to leave to do whatever they want to leave to do, go for it. But for folks who might be joining us midway, thanks so much. Welcome. If this is your first time joining a Living Room pop-up art studio live stream, you're doing exactly what you need to do. Watching, enjoying. If you feel like joining the chat and sharing anything, asking any questions, perhaps you have projects or links to creative events in your world that you'd like to let other people know about, please feel free to post them in the chat. Really lucky here in this community. There's a lot of people. It's a very broad community. When we had the physical studio space, it was pretty much just Durham region. But now, because we're online, there's a lot of folks from everywhere who tune in. So you never know who might be in your area, who might want to come out and see what you're doing or participate in your event. Or if it's a virtual event, yeah, someone we can participate from wherever we are in the world. So yes, don't be afraid to share what you're working on. Share creative adventures that you have coming up. But also, if you're just enjoying listening or watching, treating us like a little bit of a podcast, that's awesome. Don't worry about that. But you're more than welcome to experience this space in that way. Because I know how difficult it can be sometimes to contribute or to feel like you have to contribute when you're watching or listening to a live stream. And I never want anyone to feel like they have to interrupt what they're doing or what they're feeling in order to, you know, put some writing out there into the world. So I'll maybe have this coming out from here, like a little moth coming out into the light. Why did that come to mind? Interesting. Maybe I do want it over top. Okay, let's try it. Why not? So yes, just a space where we hang out. We can chat with one another in the comments. You can make art. You can listen or watch while you do other things. Maybe that's work, maybe that's doing your laundry. Whatever it might be, use this time to create or feel creative in a way that helps you feel good or feel better. That's what we hope art hives do for everyone, whether they're virtual or in-person art hives. Providing that space for people to reflect and create and question and explore. Oh, come on, tissue paper. Oh, interesting. A broken butterfly or moth. That's lovely and interesting in its own way. And it gives me an opportunity to play with that. The ghost of a butterfly. Again, something else that would happen in the art hive space all the time, and undoubtedly is happening out there for someone right now if you're creating something. Those moments where things go wrong and what we wanted initially changes because of a mistake or something doesn't work out the way we thought it would. There's this interesting moment, an opportunity to, for some folks, to correct it, and for others to embrace it, to see what it means or how it impacts the rest of their work. And a lot of the times that's the place I try to live in. To not become too obsessed with what I wanted and what is, and to maybe let the art speak to me. And you might have heard me talk about this before, so if you have, forgive me. But just that concept of, you know, there's something that we want to say, and there's something that the art wants to say as well. So sometimes it can be about letting the art meet us midway. Whatever kind of art we're making. Again, not necessarily visual art. But the art has something it wants to say too. Oh, there we go. So for example, that. I may not always understand why it's saying what it's saying, but it gives me an opportunity to work with it. And when accidents happen, that's the surprise, right? Can't predict, you can't prepare. And every time something like that happens, every time there's an accident or something unexpected happens, I get ideas for other things that can happen, that I can do, that I can try to do. For example, they're just playing with tissue paper and glue and layering over the stamped transparencies over one another. It made me think, I wonder if I can make or build up a tissue paper butterfly that's strong enough to stand on its own and be sculpted into something, to have flight, you know, sort of three-dimensional kind of existence as tissue paper, and yet, yeah, still be transparent and fragile. That's something to play with in the future. Where did I put my glue stick? There you go. And perhaps that's another thing about liminal spaces and why art hives create or are those middle spaces. Because without those middle spaces, discovery and experimentation and discovery might be a little more difficult to come by. And Simone saying, oh, interesting. So Simone sharing what she's working on. So folks, feel free to share what you're working on too. Simone says, I'm currently working on a mosaic project. I'm at the beginning stages, entangled in the broken pieces of a china teacup, constructing and deconstructing and constructing again. When I cut the pieces, this is poetic. This is actually quite lovely to read aloud. When I cut the pieces, I'm realizing maybe I need to play more. Let them decide what they want to be, how they want to be, connected, disconnected from each other, if they want to be smaller or bigger, and what they want to transform into. Yeah, lovely. Letting the art meet you halfway. If anyone here is a mosaic expert, Simone asks, let me know your trips or your tips and tricks and trips. Why not? Mosaic journeys? Absolutely. I find it frustrating that I don't know the answer yet, but that in itself is a signal to slow down maybe and let the process breathe. Some beautiful insight there, Simone. Yeah. It sounds from my side of things quite beautiful, but I hear that frustration, that sense of, especially when we work with concrete things like glass or stone or ceramics, because there is this expectation of, this is a concrete thing, I should be able to mold it or shape it or fit it together somehow. So perhaps we're a little less compassionate with ourselves. We're a little not as forgiving as we might be, because our expectation is that this firm thing will become something practical and firm and have weight and shape and structure to it. So when it doesn't work out the way we want to, or the way we imagine it to, I wish I had more mosaic knowledge to share with you, but there might be someone here who does. And even, you know what, Simona, I might recommend checking in again a little later after the live stream is done, just revisiting it maybe later tonight or tomorrow, because there might be someone who watches it after the live stream that has something they want to share, has some wisdom, some mosaic wisdom to offer. But in the meantime, it is a bit of a journey. Learning to work with a new medium always is. Making space for that journey, allowing that journey to proceed, it can be frustrating at times. I'm not going to pretend like I haven't been on similar journeys with my creative endeavors. A dialogue, a relationship that each of us has with whatever we are working on or working through or working with. But there's got to be someone out there who knows mosaics. I feel like if you don't hear back from anyone, let me know, because I do have a few folks that I can reach out to on your behalf and maybe connect you as well. All right. So there we go. Not quite sure what this is going to be in all its glory yet. It's definitely wet and gooey. And interesting, again, when I look at it on the monitor, such a different feel from looking at it with my own eyes. Huh. What is it saying now? It's always such an amazing thing when I remind myself to take a step back and just look at what I'm doing. Just to look at it, to see what's happening in this piece. A lot of unexpected stuff. A lot of messy stuff on this side. Am I okay with that mess? Is it the kind of mess that I want? I don't know if it is. So let's try and bring a little more cohesion to that mess. And see if that works. I might need to let that dry for a little bit before I do anything else. But definitely, there's something going on there. All right, so now I'm going to try threading a few things through it, only because we are nearing the end. Not totally nearing the end, coming closer to it. And you know what, Simone, I want to say thank you. I want to thank you for sharing that, because it's a vulnerable thing too. Sharing where you're at in a project, sharing the fact that it's not going as you thought it would go. I think for creatives, especially if creativity is something that is a part of our livelihood, that's so difficult to acknowledge those moments. We acknowledge them, but to share them in specifics, it can be nerve-wracking, vulnerable even. So what am I going to do here? Where's that all? So I'm just going to poke through again, make sure my holes are where I want them to be. Boop, 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 boop. And I believe they are. The good thing about the self-healing mat is I can just stab right through. So I know I have those there. I don't know if this is making sense to folks who are watching what I'm doing. All right, so that's good. That's a good place to be. Let me swap out this thread for the lighter yellow one. And Wendy, lovely. Oh, so Wendy, yep, says, I find taking a step back and looking at it with fresh eyes helps. So this, I think, is a lovely point with regards to what's working or not working, and what, you know, just the sizing of pieces that you're working with in that mosaic, but also, you know, what's not working out in the way that you want to and why. Taking a step back, having a fresh look. Sometimes with visual art, if it's something like working on a drawing, for example, I always find that, you know, that trick of holding it up in front of a mirror, so you're tricking your brain into looking at it in a slightly different way. I don't know how you can do that with mosaic though, so it might just be about taking a step back, or putting all the pieces on the ground and standing up to look down at them below. Maybe that's how we do it. Maybe that's how we do it. Like looking at a scribble drawing that you've just done to see what emerges, to see what images pop out. And Simone's there saying, thank you, Wendy, this is a great tip. And I'm threading this for now because I want to come back to it and secure it on the back afterwards, but I want to see, before I make a permanent decision, where they lie, where they come out. Let's see where the stitching takes us. I think I want to create a new hole up here. One that does not exist, so my handy dandy awl. Come on. Note to self, let's give that all a little wash afterwards so it doesn't get too gooey. Where is this thread going? Where does it want to go? Over there. Oh, that was a nice happy accident. I'm going to let that be there. It got caught on one of the tabs up there, the notebook tabs. And I like it. Something fragile about this piece. It's speaking to me through all the conversations we've had today about vulnerability and strength. And paper and textiles and fabric are good reminders of that, right? The materials that we create with and how much we ask of them in the process. And how much we ask of ourselves. So in a conversation today that has spanned what we've talked about, liminal spaces and materials not having a home or not knowing how to be used. We've talked about emotions as tools and the capacity we have as human beings and creatures to hold more than one feeling at a time, to experience more than one emotion at a time, what that means. Talked about vulnerability and strength and how so often they come together somehow. Really beautiful, beautiful things. As always, I'm so grateful that I have a community of folks who feel comfortable sharing these things and exploring these conversations. We don't always get to talk about them in the way that we want. What happens if that goes there? Maybe I do want that cot under there. No, not that one. Okay. Let's crush, let's like find a way to, the word crush came to mind. I was going to say crush this divide, but crush is not the word at all I wanted to use. Cross this divide? Something interesting about crushing, though. Maybe mashing all this paper together. Maybe that's why I've got that on my mind. And if you hear me yelp out at any moment, it's because I've probably stabbed myself with an awl. But that's okay. I'll be fine. Okay. And of course, for folks who are listening or watching or tuning in again later on, just a reminder that after the live stream today, there we are, I'll be posting another Facebook post, a little show and tell post. So you can feel free to share your creations, share images of works in progress, and continue the conversations maybe about how to deal with certain issues that come up. All of those conversations are welcome. We just do our best to help continue the conversations that start here or provide other avenues for those conversations to unfold. This is calling for something else. So I'm going to step back. I'm going to look at the monitor so I can see it a little more clearly. You know what? I think it needs red. It needs something bright. It needs something... Let's see if I have some red yarn or embroidery thread on hand. Here, I must. Yes, I do. Of course I do, right here. That's what a messy studio space can do. You may not be able to always find everything, but at least you know it's somewhere on hand. That's what I'll tell myself anyways. In this liminal space between messy and clean. The space between don't have the energy to tidy things up right now and what? I'm desperately wanting to. Let's see what this pop of color does. The first time I stitched paper, not on a sewing machine, I think was for the Truth and Reconciliation traveling art exhibit that was hosted or sparked by the Hive network. And as I was exploring, well, maybe it wasn't the first time, but the most recent time I've done some abstract, spontaneous stitching is in a piece like this that had shape, that wasn't just an accent or a decorative element. Stitching that to me was saying something important about where I was at and what I was doing, what I needed to do. It was a pretty powerful experience. I love working in, I suppose, what could be perceived as non-traditional ways with fine art supplies. Challenge them, asking them to do things that they don't normally do. Come. And if there's anyone else out there right now who has hand-stitched paper, I'd love to learn about what your experiences have been like as well. You can even share examples of work that you've done. If you like. I'm not the boss of you. There's something in it that fascinates me, and I love that idea of fibers coming together. Mashing up alongside of one another. Well, hello. I will glue stick you down a little bit. You've come loose. As is to be expected, since all my papers are wet. And now it seems that the stitching is helping to hold this together as well. Lots of metaphors. Now, what might become of a piece like this? I don't know, folks. What do you think? There might be room for writing on this. Maybe that's what I'm feeling. To find myself a paint marker, maybe. Just looking at it here, let's swatch over. Fabric swatches on the brain. Have a closer look. Maybe find myself a paint marker or a white gel pen that has a little more contrast. And maybe write across it. Maybe, yeah. Maybe this is a kind of journal in some way. Maybe this is a place to let the language take over now that I've let this out. It's always interesting. I love, being able to see something in a different light. Perspective. It's a beautiful thing. But definitely felt I needed to do something like this today. Needed to do something a little messy, a little abstract, not necessarily pretty, something just to let out and explore all the different things that I'm feeling about being somehow in the middle of things. Oh, wow. Thank you, Wendy. Wendy's saying, love this. Wendy, you're so amazing. And Wendy, were you on the live stream when I showed my bags that came from some of the fabric that you donated? let me do that right now. Maybe I should set this aside again. So folks, if you were here in the beginning when I was showing these off, bear with me. I'm just so excited that I found a really cool way to use fabric scraps. And maybe I've already talked to you about it. I know I was talking to Joanne about it. But here, so Wendy, remember when you donated some of those fabric scraps? Sewing them, turning them into bags for workshop kits and for the mobile art hive. So instead of sewing on handles, which, you know, sometimes I get a little too precious about that and a little too impatient about that, and I don't always have the materials I want on hand to make good handles. So I thought, well, I'll just make buttonhole handles. And I love it. So some of this fabric might be familiar to you. So these are just some of the ones that I was making that I grabbed before the live stream to bring up. And it's a great way to use mismatched samples as well. So isn't it funny? So going from that dark, intense personal piece back to these pieces. Oh, buy tissue paper. Which are equally as important to me, if that makes sense. I have, you know, there's art for me that helps release and expel and hold on to and make sense of difficult, weird, uncertain things that I might be feeling or thinking about inside, things that I don't know if I can describe in words. And then there are art pieces or projects like this that just help me make meaning of everything and keep everything in its place. And it's something like I can say, I know what this is going to look like in the end. I figured this out. And, you know, pending any machine blow-ups. And so far, knock on wood, that has not happened. It's something that's predictable and comfortable and safe. And then, of course, are the projects like the one Simone is working on right now, where it feels like it should fall somewhere in between that. It's mosaic. It's a mosaic. The mosaics work in a certain way. Or do they? But Wendy, thank you so much for these donations. We wanted to have something that was a little special, and we were thinking about, as far as the studio was concerned, with all the things that we might be sharing or giving out or selling in community with the Mobile Art Hive. Of course, another question is sustainability. What does that look like? I think I don't like this thread being all the way up there anymore. I did. And now I don't. Oh, interesting. Now it's like a cat's cradle kind of experience. Yes, so sustainability, and do we buy new plastic bags? Do we buy new paper bags? Do we ask people to bring their own bags? All of those things are possibilities, and chances are we probably will indulge in those things from time to time. But we have those fabrics, so why not? Why not make some bags and encourage people to bring them back? So if you purchase some supplies from us, or if we share some supplies with you, or if you grab a free workshop kit, anything that you want to carry with you back home, you can use those bags to do so. If you want to bring along supplies in your bag when you return for a workshop or an activity or a community collaboration, this becomes your little living room bag that you can take with you wherever you want. So thank you for that. Those fabric samples have been staring at me all summer long, just waiting to be turned into something. And finally, this past weekend, on Labor Day weekend, I got the chance to sit down and play, and it was great. So thank you. Let's see what we have here. So right now I think I need to let this dry a little bit. I think I need to be patient, something I have such a difficult time with, and just let it be. But that's okay. Oh, and Momo was saying, gorgeous, makes me think of the earth opening up. Thank you, Momo. There was an earthquake in Mexico yesterday. Wait, that's right. And Momo says, maybe that is on my mind. For sure, that is on my mind. Oh, Momo, I'm sorry I didn't think to ask earlier. I think I saw a headline about that and haven't had a chance to dig a little deeper to learn about how folks are doing. I hope your loved ones are all right. I think it's still a strange thing whenever these big things that are happening in the world, sometimes they happen in places we love and places we dream of loving, of going to. There are big, complicated, difficult things often happening in the world, and often these things are beyond the control of us, and they're difficult to process. So I know this is something that's going on for you and on your mind in a very specific way, but I do think this piece is speaking to that place, those feelings, those strange frustrations of things breaking open, or maybe even drifting apart, or maybe there's something in this piece that's trying to pull things together again. I'm not sure. Yeah, there's a lot of things to think about in this piece. A lot of things to think about. So I might journal on this piece once it dries. I think I'll definitely be journaling about this piece after it dries. Because there's a lot of stuff going on in the world, isn't there? In the larger world and in our own internal worlds too. Interesting. So Simone's saying, yes, mosaic is maybe a bit of both. Such an interesting process. So that's the mosaic being, and again, a similar thing here too, I'm even realizing. The mosaic with that metaphor of things breaking apart and being coming together again. That's interesting. Similar vibes in different mediums. Simone's saying, yes, mosaic is maybe a bit of both. Such an interesting process. I'm more than happy to share as I'm trying things. It helps me too. I wanted to transform the cup, which broke years ago, into something beautiful again. I cut the broken sections into further pieces and put the sections back together like a puzzle. And this took me a few hours. I enjoyed it. That does sound satisfying to do. I was thinking each section would be its own golden joined coaster. But something is telling me all the sections want to rejoice together again. And I'm not sure the section shapes the way I broke them are doing it for me, so I'm thinking of switching gears to making a planter. Oh, that sounds beautiful as well. I'll post some pictures after the live stream. Would love anyone's input. Simone, what a journey. What a journey. I love when our creative works take us to those places. It sounds like every step of the way it's been creative and challenging and engaging and meaningful for you. I love that. Yeah, I love that. And it makes me, it's just such an interesting thing how, for me, all these themes, everything that we've been talking about today kind of is in that idea, right? Of the creation process is sometimes about destroying things and reassembling things and building things and getting to know the things we're working with. And yeah, that's life too, I suppose. Hopefully in a positive way, hoping that no one breaks apart. I'd never want that. But there are pieces of ourselves that sometimes need tending to, and pieces of ourselves that sometimes need to be nurtured and cared for. So as we're wrapping up here, and I'm thanking everyone for joining us, I think that's something that if it's not too much for me to ask, again, I'm not the boss of you, but if you are in a place right now where there are parts of yourselves that need to be tended to, that need a little loving kindness, a little tenderness, some vulnerable raw pieces, some pieces that are available to transformation and change, I invite you to take some time to reflect on that, create on that, and allow for that strange, uncertain middle space that can be both liberating and sometimes terrifying to hold. And know that you're not alone. So wherever you are in the world, even though you might be on your own, you're not on your own. You are experiencing something that so many of us are experiencing in our own ways. And again, in the show and tell post, if folks want to continue these conversations or even to connect through Facebook, to reach out, to provide support or resources to one another, that's wonderful. That's a beautiful thing to be able to do. So I will definitely encourage that, because not one of us alone has all the answers to things. So feel free to ask questions. Feel free to share the things that aren't working out in case someone else out there has some suggestions about how they might help work it out, or things that they've done that have been helpful in their own journeys of working things out. That's a lot. Yeah, I think it's time for me to stop talking and take my dog for a walk. So everyone, thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you for sharing your art, your hearts, your process, your reflections on all the different themes and all the common themes that have been bubbling up to the surface today. I hope everyone out there is doing well, and that if you're having one of those days, that you can take some time to reach for a little bit of relief, to find that wellness, or at least to acknowledge where you're at and recognize that it's okay not to be okay. But again, there's so many supports out there. If you're really struggling, don't be afraid to reach out. You're amazing. Thank you. Thank you for sharing this space with me. And until we can connect and create again in person, I really do look forward to creating with you online again. I'll see you soon. If not, what is it? Today's Wednesday, so tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. there's the writers group. Laura Brown, I think, is doing an art stream tomorrow night at 7 p.m. on the Facebook page, just like this one. There's lots to do and lots to share with one another, so take care of yourselves. And tend to those creative hearts, folks. You're worth it. Have a wonderful day. Oh, wait, lots of stuff, comments I haven't seen. So wait, before I run away. Oh my goodness, scrolling up, Mary. Always the case as I get ready to say goodbye. Scroll up, Mary. Remember to scroll up. Oh, but these are some great things to end on. So before I wrap up, I'd like to just acknowledge this. So Joanna's saying, I could ponder that piece for a very long time. Inspiring and thought-provoking, Mary. Joanna says to Simone, there's something very beautiful about creating something new out of brokenness. Right? And Momo says, ooh, to destroy is to create. That is a quote that made it to my collage last week. So fitting. And Simone says, beautiful creation session, Mary. Appreciate the conversation. That goes out to everyone. Yep, I feel the same. Thank you for sharing this space with me. I'm super lucky and super grateful. Thank you for being in this liminal space with me today. I look forward to you. What do I look forward to you doing? I don't know. I look forward to me doing and creating with you. Us creating. I better stop talking. Okay, now it's definitely time. So much love sending out to you. Mwah. Take care. And see you again soon, folks. Bye.